Yeah. Well, let's find out how they did it.
How?
Warriors assistant coach Jama Mahlalela back on Willard and Dibs here on 95.7 The Game. Excited to have you, Coach. And come on now, give us a real answer. Don't give us the, the guys. Like, what did you do at halftime? What happened?
No, thanks for having me, guys. Like you say, it really was a special win. I think because when you're down like that in the NBA, finding a way to come back is really important and shows some pretty good character. And I think second half, there was definitely some changes. Obviously, Dante was really good in that box and one on Dame, really sort of just took it up another notch. I thought J.K. played really good minutes against him as well. So I think that was one big change where those two guys stepped up in a coverage change. And then offensively, I think when a player is such a high-volume shooter like Dame is, getting him involved more, and I think the second half we actually put him in pick and rolls more and got him involved more in the offense where he had to guard basically, and I think that was a good switch for us too. So two structural changes that kind of really helped us out. But I think the players, it's something simple, but the players played with more force, and that sometimes gets the job done in the NBA.
It sure does. It's one thing to play with more force. It's another thing to play the way you guys did in the second half. But take us into a general halftime, because Mark and I were talking about this. The fantasy is you go in the locker room, somebody punches a locker, they flip the spread, it's a big Newt Rockne speech, and let's go out there and give them hell, boys. But what happens during halftime of an average NBA game?
Yeah, so realistically, during the course of the first half, the coaches are sort of, evaluating what's been happening, and they're actually pulling clips. So as the game is happening, say, hey, let's get that one, let's get that one, let's get that one. And you end up usually with about 12 to 14 sort of plays from that first half that you want to look at as a staff and probably make some adjustments on. You pare it down to about 8 of the most important ones. And then as a coaching staff, your job really in halftime is to figure out what's working, what's not working, and what are the shifts we can make within that. And that's what the coaches basically spend our 10 minutes really sort of diving into, having that discussion, and then giving it to the players in as succinct a way as possible so they know whatever the changes are, or the encouragement of what's working well too. That's a big thing in the NBA. This is working, let's keep going to this, and force the other team to make a shift. And we show the film to the players. They get out there and execute, which is what they did yesterday.
Coach, I wonder this, though. It also feels like, and I don't know if it's age, I don't know if it's just because of the championship pedigree, maybe it's just the way the league is this year. What we saw in the second half last night, is your team capable of doing that for 4 consecutive quarters?
Yeah, without question. I mean, I think you just know with the players we do have, and as we start to get healthier and healthier, without question, we can do that. It's a matter of when we start to do it with regularity and consistency. And that's been this whole NBA season, right? You've all watched our season. It's about consistency. And when we're good, we're a really, really good team. It's just we got to do it more often. So that's what we're imploring the guys to do as a staff. We're committing to it as well. So that's our challenge in these last 20 games or whatever we got left.
J.K. has gone from DNP to 25 minutes a night of absolutely critical, crucial minutes. What has he done individually to go from where he was to where he is now?
I mean, first, he's doing the work. He's actually in the gym right now as we speak. After a big game, he was the first player in here this morning. So he puts the work in, and I think that's what it starts with, and that's the only way that a player like him can take this next step and his big jump, which he's starting to do now. But his focus has been defensively. Obviously, he gets on the floor and he stays on the floor because of his defense. And if he's able to lock down sort of primary offensive players like Lillard last night or Kawhi coming up, that's going to be a big challenge for him to continue to work on, and that's going to be his sort of bread and butter for NBA minutes. And it's fun to be able to play him more, right? Because you get some of these great highlight reel offensive moments, but it's the defense that's really the important part.
Warriors assistant Jama Mahlalela is with us here on Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Coach, you've worked with players like Pascal Siakam and Anunoby there in Toronto, and those are guys who maybe took a minute and then they really popped. Do you see some similarities with that and Kuminga? What's the ceiling there?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think actually the staff talked about this the other day. If you really look at all the young players in the NBA, very seldom does the rookie, really, really pop. The really special ones do, obviously. But in general, you're looking at your sort of end of the second year, right, where J.K. is at, or a third year when these big jumps really start to happen. Looking across the league, a lot of the players really make that jump into year 3. And I think J.K.'s positioning himself really well for that. The biggest thing that people don't give him credit for is he actually understands the game really really well. Like, when you go watch tape with him and understand coverages and missed assignments, like, he sees everything. It's just getting reps and experience to do it and physically do it time after time. So we definitely feel like there's a really big opportunity for him to take this big, gigantic leap, because the athleticism he brings is unbelievable. The shooting he's starting to shoot with is so high level. He gets fouled all the time. Like, this stuff's big time, right? So he's got to keep on going with it.
And the fact that he will dunk on simply anybody is what fans absolutely love. Everyone's talked about Wiseman, Kuminga, and Moody. We know that Wiseman's off to Detroit and doing his thing, but Moses Moody, what does he need to improve upon to start to make that leap that we've seen Jonathan Kuminga make?
Yeah, very similar. I think Moses is sort of doing it in the shadows right now. So his work is incredible. And if you track a lot of his stats over the last little while, like his foul rate, like really, he's actually the top of our team in terms of not fouling. He's the top of our team in terms of closeout defense. So there's all these sort of advanced analytics where he's really tracking well and trending to be this really phenomenal player. So it's just more in the shadows because our team still does have a lot of depth and it's hard to get him on the floor. But he's really making good steps and good progress as he builds his confidence. And his three-point shooting is taking a bit of a dip. But I think once that, we know he's a good shooter, like that's just established. So once that really comes back to the forefront, and his defense sort of gets to a really good space, he's another player that year three I think becomes this special year where a few more minutes, a few more reps and opportunities, and learning. The biggest thing too with the young guys, right, is, and Pascal and Fred were like this, is learning NBA personnel. You have to know how to guard these guys. Like it's a tough job to guard Damian Lillard last night. Like, that's hard to do, and if you've only done it 2 times, it's going to be more difficult. If you get to your 5th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 15th time guarding the guy, it makes it way easier. So that's why these guys get better over time.
Coach, are y'all scoreboard watching? How much does the seed matter to you?
Yeah, I think. Listen, like we're scoreboard watching to make sure we're going up the columns and wins, right? That's what matters most. You're definitely checking to see what other teams are doing that are right around you. This Western Conference is wild. Like, I haven't seen anything like this in my NBA years, where it's so compacted and so close. And on any given night, you can literally jump to, I think we're 5th or something now, and you can go to 11th by tomorrow. Like, it's crazy how close all this is. So you definitely are aware of how those other Western Conference teams are, and I think it's fun. The NBA builds it well, where this last 20 games, we're going to play a lot of them, right? So we can kind of control our own destiny and play the teams that we're right in the thick of it with, and that's exciting.
Kevon Looney is such a fan favorite for so many reasons, but internally, from the coach's standpoint, is it easy to watch him play and to try to get other guys to emulate his efficiency despite being really an above-the-rim player? Yeah,
Loon is like, he's that guy that no one really notices unless you're kind of really watching the game. Like, he's not making the highlight reel, nothing. He's doing nothing that's like, outlandish, crazy. Oh my gosh, Loon! But he'll suddenly have, like 13 rebounds every single night. Lead the team in the boards, do the box out stuff, do the crackback, do all the little things that really help us to win. So he's on a tear right now. Like, his level of play has really increased. Right, he's such a focal point of what we do, and he and Draymond together, that pairing where they can sort of switch collectively and basically take care of the bigs on an opposing team, is special. And I think we're really lucky that we have the ability to play both of those guys in both sort of 4 and 5 roles.
Coach, I know that they're only on the schedule one more time, but I'm fascinated by this Laker game that's coming up on Sunday because of the moves that they made, but now also the absence of LeBron James and the fact that they've beaten you guys twice in the last few weeks. How different of a task is playing the Lakers when LeBron's not there?
Yeah, first and foremost, that team really has changed, and the trade deadline, I think, was very good to them. We're all seeing that in terms of the role Vanderbilt's having D'Angelo Russell. Like, those guys are key players. Beasley, obviously, in our game, too many threes for my liking, but the team is better, right? They're now a team. They're balanced. Their roster makes sense. They can sort of positionally do the right things and guard at multiple positions and kind of have a substitution pattern that works. But obviously LeBron is the central cog of that. So they're best with LeBron without question. But I think in the past, when a LeBron-less Lakers was a much different night than what we're going to face. I think we're going to have a heck of a challenge on our hands. The way that they play now is a much better team game. So with or without LeBron, we're going to have to really make sure we lock into coverages, know who their key people are, limit some of their main scorers, but also they defend. And they defend at a pretty high level now, so we're going to have to find a way to score against them.
Virtually every other team in the West added new pieces. I know you guys added Gary Payton II, an old piece coming back again. How much do you think that your chemistry can ultimately be a bigger positive for you than maybe some of these additions to new teams?
I think the Warriors have proven, like, year after year, that continuity thing really matters. Like the NBA is such a flux league, right? Everyone's just jumping all over the place. And we've been pretty stable for quite a few years now, and I think Gary just fits that piece as well, right? Like, so as soon as he gets right and gets healthy, like he can just automatically jump into the continuity of how we play, the flow of our offense, the flow of our defense, and he's obviously proven to be a really good, productive piece for us. He fits Warriors basketball. So I think that if you evaluate all the moves over the trade deadline, like us getting that continuity piece is actually a really big help for us. We can't wait for him to get on the floor and start to sort of, get back to the things that he does. Like his rim finishing, we all know his on-ball defense. But even his corner three-point shooting looks really good as well. So that's sort of an exciting thing for us.
Coach, I'm glad you mentioned that word continuity. Kevin Durant is going to play for the Suns tonight. Is it turnkey? Is it that easy? Or are you guys going to whack them next week?
Yeah, it's never turnkey, but I mean, KD is really good.
Sure. Right.
That he helps their team without question. But I do think, as you get into a playoff series and as we're getting closer to the playoffs, like understanding, and last night was this great example, right? We play Damian Lillard. We sort of have a more advanced game plan, and our players have to learn how to play in that game plan. Like our guys have played different strategies a lot over the course of time, and I think that's an advantage to us. KD's skill is incredible, but Coach Monty Williams has a job on his hands to get him indoctrinated and locked into how the Phoenix plays. And so that'll take some time, and obviously they're going to be a great team, and we're excited to see how they play. But we can't wait to if we see him, we'll hope this continuity plays off for us.
Is playing defense now such a challenge to where coming in a defensive coordinator spot or on the coaching staff where you're trying to preach this? Is it almost a case of try to avoid giving up big runs as opposed to the old school ideology of let's get a stop?
Yeah, I think, Coach does it best. Like, every team in the NBA is probably going to score about 100 points every night, no matter what you do. Like whatever your coverages are, whatever your defensive schemes are, if you can have, 5 Gary Paytons out there, like they're probably still going to score 100 points. So it's what do you do with those extra 20 points? And that's the difference in every NBA game. And I think that's the focus of a defensive coordinator. That's the focus of sort of coaches looking at possessions and figuring out where are these key stops you can get within the flow of the game. Obviously, we went box and one yesterday as sort of a strategy defensive piece. I think being good in pick and roll coverage, which we need to continue to do as a team, playing with active hands, forcing deflections and turnovers. It's the small things on defense that pay dividends because the offense is really good. I think it's the highest PPP rate, right? That people are scoring the most ever in NBA history. So people are going to score. It's about getting timely stops when you need them.
Hey, Coach, as always, we love having you, man. Thank you so much for making the time for us today.
Appreciate you guys. All the best.
Okay, there it is. Jama Mahlalela with us here on Willard and Dibs.